The day I signed my name for the last time as someone's wife, I was 60 years old. I had given that man 30 years, my youth, my savings, my silence. And he was 3 miles away at Nordstrom, using my credit card to buy his girlfriend a handbag. But here's what he didn't know. For 20 years, in the quiet hours he never paid attention to, I had been building a way out. 1 month, one deposit, one secret account at a time. This is the story of what I did with it, and why at 60 my real life finally began. I remember exactly what the sky looked like that morning, one of those pale blue June days in central Ohio, where the light feels almost forgiving. The county clerk's office was a plain room with fluorescent lighting and gray carpet. The clerk barely looked up when she slid the papers across the counter. I signed my name, Margaret Ann Calloway. For 30 years, I had been Margaret Ann Prescott, wife of Dennis Ray Prescott, married at St. Michael's Lutheran Church on a warm September afternoon. But as of that morning, I was a Calloway again. My mother's name, my name. I walked down 2 flights of stairs, holding the certified copy of the divorce decree close to my chest. When I pushed open the glass door and stepped into the June sunshine, I felt something unexpected, a lightness. Not joy exactly, more like breaking the surface after holding your breath underwater. 30 years. And now this. I was 60 years old standing on that sidewalk, and I did not feel old. I felt like I was finally waking up. And then my phone rang. Dennis. I almost didn't answer, but 30 years of reflex made me pick up. Maggie. The card isn't working. I'm at Nordstrom and it got declined. That familiar, frantic pitch, the one that meant he needed someone to fix something for him. I could hear Crystal in the background. Crystal Dawson, 38 years old, 22 years younger than me. Oh my God, people are staring. This is so embarrassing. Dennis? I said, surprised by how calm I sounded. I signed the divorce papers this morning. You're no longer on that account. Silence. Then his voice shifted to threatening that gear change I had watched 1,000 times. You call the bank right now and you tell them, I'm sorry, Dennis. Have a nice life. I hung up. I stood there with the sun on my face and a pigeon eyeing me from the railing, and I almost laughed out loud. I had been waiting 30 years to do that. The 30 years. When I met Dennis Prescott, he was the most charismatic man I had ever seen. Tall, sandy-haired, with a laugh that could fill a room. We married young. I was 29. He was 31. My friends were envious. You landed a good one, Maggie. Hold on tight. I held on. For 30 years. The cracks showed early an unexplained hotel receipt when our daughter Sophie was 2, and I was pregnant with our son Tyler. He cried, went to his knees in our kitchen, swore it was a terrible mistake. I believed him. And then it happened again. And again. Different women, same script, same promises, same kitchen floor. The money evaporated too. Real estate ventures that went sideways. A friend's startup that folded. Grand talk about the next big opportunity. And meanwhile, the actual income dwindled until by the time I filed for divorce, Dennis was driving for a rideshare company at 65 and still talking about his glory days. What he did not know was that I had been quietly building something of my own. The secret. 10 years into the marriage, I started bookkeeping from home. Small businesses, restaurants, dry cleaners quietly, without announcing it, because Dennis didn't like the idea of his wife working. I opened a separate savings account at a bank across town where none of our neighbors banked. Every month for 20 years, I deposited what I earned. By the time I filed for divorce, there was $138,000 in that account. Dennis didn't know it existed. The house was also mine. My mother had left it to me outright when she passed, and we used the proceeds from selling it as a down payment on our home on Maple Ridge Drive. My attorney confirmed it. Inheritance funds meant the house was my separate property under Ohio law. Dennis had no legal claim to it and had been living there on my dime for 18 years without knowing. When I walked out of the clerk's office that morning, I had a paid-off house, $138,000 in savings, and a bookkeeping business bringing in nearly $2,000 a month. I wasn't starting over from scratch. I was starting, for the first time in my adult life, from honest ground. My friend Frank, one more person you need to know, Frank Holloway, 61, who grew up on my block in Dayton and spent his career in banking before taking early retirement and opening a small coffee shop called Morning Light near the university. Mismatched furniture, good jazz, the best coffee in town. Frank had known about my divorce plans for 2 years. He'd listened, asked smart questions, and never told me what to do. After I hung up on Dennis that June morning, he was the first person I called. "It's done," I told him. A pause. "How do you feel?" "Like I can breathe for the first time in 30 years. "Then get over here. The coffee's fresh." Behind me, my phone buzzed again and again, Dennis, then a furious text. I put it in my purse and walked to my car. I didn't look back. Frank set a black coffee in front of me. Without asking, he knew how I took it. We laughed about the Nordstrom incident. But then his banker's brain kicked in. "Maggie, have you thought about running a full financial check?" Dennis had access to shared accounts for a long time, and he thinks creatively when he's desperate. A knot formed in my stomach. The anxiety I'd been pushing down all morning surfaced. "You think he did something? I think we should check." My friend Dave Kowalski is branch manager at Community First. Let's go in tomorrow. If you're finding the story compelling, please hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Your support helps us share more important stories like this one. Now, let's continue with what happened next. Dave Kowalski had a neat silver mustache and the careful manner of someone you want handling your money. He shook my hand and said, "Why don't you sit down and let's go through what I'm seeing?" That phrase, "what I'm seeing," made my hands go cold. "Your ex-husband took out a secured loan 4 weeks ago. $45,000. Dave folded his hands on the desk. "The collateral he listed was your property at 214 Maple Ridge Drive." Frank exhaled slowly beside me. "That's my house," I said. "My separate property." "Yes. And in order to use it as collateral, there would need to be a spousal consent form signed by you. There is such a form on file, with your signature on it." "I never signed anything," I said. "I absolutely did not sign any consent form." Dave turned his monitor toward me. "There's more. 2 additional loans at other institutions, $20,000 and $18,000. All secured against Maple Ridge. $83,000, Frank said quietly. "Total?" I sat very still and let the numbers land. $83,000 against my mother's house, using a signature that was not mine. There is a fury that doesn't roar, it settles cold and deep, like a stone at the bottom of a very still lake. That is what I felt. And underneath it, a grief I hadn't expected. Because no matter how many times a person has betrayed you, there is always some small piece of you that hoped they wouldn't do it again. I called Dennis right there in Dave's office. "I'm at the bank. I know about the loans. All 3 of them. That was a family emergency. You weren't being reasonable. You forged my signature. That is fraud. That is a crime. I have an attorney appointment this afternoon. Don't contact me without going through her." I hung up. My hands were trembling. Frank put a steady hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "I will be," I said. And I meant it completely. I will absolutely be okay. Attorney Linda Vasquez was in her mid-40s compact, dark-haired, with the expression of someone who had heard many difficult stories and had no intention of being knocked sideways by any of them. She listened without interrupting, reviewed Dave's documents, and gave me the situation plainly. Your house is solid, separate property, well-documented inheritance. The forged consent forms are legally challengeable. If we prove you didn't sign them, those encumbrances can be voided. The lenders may even bear liability. She paused. However, men like your ex-husband don't retreat gracefully. He will escalate. But here is what I've learned: the more they talk, the better for us. Document everything. And when he calls, keep him talking. We were still in her office when my phone rang. Dennis, Linda says, take it. Speaker, Maggie, I hear you've been to see a lawyer. I have. Don't do this. We can settle this privately. You forged my signature on 3 loan documents, Dennis. His voice turned hard. You want to play hardball? Fine. I know people who can find bank accounts, assets. And that house, I will tie it up in court for years. You want to drain your retirement savings on litigation? Because that is exactly what happens if you keep pushing. Linda was scribbling on her notepad. She turned it toward me. Perfect. Keep going. Anything else you'd like to add? I asked. His tone softened. Look, let's just be reasonable. Dennis, this call has been recorded. The threats, the false statement warnings, the bad faith litigation threat, all documented. Have a good evening. You recorded this? Ohio is a one-party consent state, Linda said pleasantly, leaning toward the phone. I hung up. Linda looked at me with something close to delight. He really does most of the work himself. The night he came to the house, the pounding started at 11 o'clock Thursday night. Maggie, open the door. I didn't go to the door. I looked out from behind the hall curtain. Dennis on my porch, drunk, unsteady. He was shouting about the lawyer, the bank, and Crystal who, I gathered, had heard the loan delinquency notification at his apartment and packed a bag that same afternoon. She left because of you. You did this to me, Frank called. I can hear him from 4 blocks away. Want me to come over? No, just call it in. Already done. I watched Dennis through the curtain and felt something unexpected, not fear, not guilt, something closer to grief. Not for the man on my porch, but for the man I had believed he was at 28, standing at the altar with his hands in mine. That man had never existed, but I had loved the idea of him for a long time, and the love had been real even if he hadn't been. Something old was dying that night. I let it die. The police arrived 12 minutes later. Dennis left quietly. I made chamomile tea, sat at the kitchen table, and thought about how little I felt, not numbness, but clarity. The kind that only comes when you have finally stopped waiting for someone to become different than they are. I fell asleep in my chair around midnight. I slept better than I had in 30 years. In the weeks that followed, Dennis's world came apart the way old houses do, not all at once, but in a steady progression of small collapses. Linda's motion succeeded. 2 lenders settled within 30 days. The third took longer, but by fall, the property was fully cleared. Dennis lost his rideshare account. His credit cratered. Crystal was gone. His friends stopped answering when he started asking for loans. The morning he came back. He came to my door on a Tuesday morning. No pounding this time, just the doorbell, twice, soft. He stood on my porch with his hands in his jacket pockets, shoulders rounded. The man who had always stood straight. I need help, he said. In a flat, tired voice, he told me the whole of it, accounts frozen. No income, phone about to be cut off, lease coming due. I don't have anywhere to go. I can't let Sophie and Tyler see me like this. I stood in my doorway and thought about all of it. The hotel receipts, the broken promises, the loans against my house with my forged name. Dennis, I can't give you money. I won't, but I will call Tyler. Your son loves you. That's between the two of you. He nodded slowly. Then, almost to himself, I wasted everything, didn't I? Not really a question. I think you made a lot of choices, I said. And they brought you here. What comes next is up to you. He left without looking back. I watched until his car turned the corner, then went inside and called my son. Tyler listened carefully and said, "Are you okay? Actually okay?" I told him I was more than okay. He said he would deal with his father, not abandon him, but set clear limits. That was my son, steady and decent. Sophie cried when I called her, the quiet, exhausted kind. I kept thinking he'd get better. How did you survive it, Mom? I found things that were mine, I said. Work no one could take from me. Money I'd earned myself, and your grandmother's voice in my ear keeps something for yourself that no one else can touch. A long pause. Can I come home? Any time, I said. I just redecorated. She laughed through her tears, and so did I. I want to tell you about the house. I had lived in it for 18 years and never once decorated it the way I wanted to. Dennis had opinions about everything, paint, furniture, light fixtures, and it all filtered through his sense of what looked prosperous to guests. It was not a home. It was a stage set. The first thing I did after changing the locks was walk through every room with a notepad. Dark. Cold. These colors are not mine. Why have I never had a real workspace? Then I called Frank. I'm redecorating. Will you help me? When do we start? Frank turned out to be a serious woodworker. He pulled out the gloomy old built-ins in the den and replaced them with simple, white-painted pine shelving that made the room look like someone actually lived there. I chose paint colors for the first time in my adult life. Sage green in the living room, warm buttery yellow in the kitchen, a shade called old linen in my bedroom that was so exactly right I lay in bed the first morning just looking at the walls. I replaced the formal dining set that always made meals feel like an interview with a round estate sale table and mismatched chairs. Because I wanted to. Because they looked like personality rather than performance. The room that was finally mine. I turned Dennis's old office into a studio. I had always wanted to make things with my hands, wood, fabric, something physical. Frank taught me. Simple things at first, a bathroom shelf, a plant stand, small frames. But something happened while I worked that I hadn't anticipated. The noise stopped. 30 years of low-level vigilance, the constant monitoring of someone else's moods. The endless wondering whether today would be good or difficult went quiet. There was only the task and the satisfying concentration it required. I had never known quiet like that. I hadn't known it was possible. Frank watched me finish a small bookcase one Saturday afternoon. You look different. Lighter. I feel lighter, I said. Good. It suits you. We had been spending a great deal of time together, Frank and I. I'll leave it at that, except to say it felt nothing like 30 years with Dennis. It felt like being seen. I had forgotten what that was. 1 year later, a Saturday in October, the air sharp and clean, the maples turned copper. I came downstairs at 7:30 to sage walls catching the morning light, and the kitchen smelling of coffee and rosemary. Sophie was coming at noon. Tyler had called to say my granddaughter had said grandma for the first time, and he had video evidence. Frank was picking me up at 2 for apple cider pressing at an orchard 20 miles east. Linda's office had confirmed the last encumbrance was cleared. I stood at the kitchen window with my coffee and looked at the backyard garden tomatoes, herbs, stubborn squash that had rewarded me beyond reason. 6 jars of tomato sauce on the pantry shelf like small patient trophies. 61 years old. 14 months since the county clerk's office. I thought about the woman who had signed those papers, holding the decree against her chest on the courthouse steps, frightened underneath the lightness, waking at 3 in the morning that first month, asking herself who starts over at 60. I thought about the answer. You do. You start right now, without asking permission. You find the things that are genuinely yours. You do the work that matters. You let yourself be seen by people who are actually capable of seeing you. You plant a garden and line the jars on the shelf and feel in your chest the satisfaction of having built something real. You call your daughter. You call your son. You go to the orchard. You live your life. A note to you. Maybe you are 60 like I was. Maybe you are older or younger, and someone has told you in words or in the way they look at you that your time for change has passed. That is not true. That is a story someone told you, possibly someone who needed you to stay exactly where you were. My mother told me, keep something for yourself that no one can touch. She meant money, but she meant more your sense of your own worth, your knowledge of what you are capable of, independent of what anyone tells you. Start building that today. Start small if you must. It just has to be yours, because the day you need it, you will want it ready. And when you finally walk out into the sunshine, holding your own freedom close to your chest, you will want to stand there, face lifted, and feel nothing but the warmth. That is what I wish for you.